I'm Abby.
I'm Allie.
We're the Ranic twins, and this is Oops, I Arted,
a part of the Hayden Intelligence Syndicate. And today we'll be covering Michelangelo's Statue of David.
I love Michelangelo. I feel like I say I love all of the artists that we go over, but that's why we go over the artists that we do.
Yes, we have a passion for all of these stories. And Michelangelo, this is one of many stories I'm sure we'll cover by him.
Yes, he has lots of interesting parts of his life, and we had to pick out of all of them.
This is a good start, though, because he started young, and this really cemented his career as a renowned statue maker.
Absolutely.
So, he was born March 6, 1475, in the Republic of Florence, which is near modern-day Tuscany, Italy. And his name?
Michelangelo de Lodovico Buonarroti. Is that Simone?
Yeah.
I can't read your handwriting.
Well, anyways, we just call him Michelangelo.
Please email us with the pronunciation if you have it.
Yeah, we'll plug that at the end. So, in the 16th century, the Florence Cathedral was in the process of being remodeled. There was a committee in charge of how they were going to do this, and they wanted to decorate the roof line with statues of biblical prophets or mythological creatures,
which was very popular at the time.
I mean, it was a new age for sculpting. So, a statue of David was ordered in 1464. A large marble slab was extracted from Carrara quarries in Tuscany, Italy, and from what I understand, that marble is pretty good.
1464, that's before he was born.
Yes.
So this was all happening before he was even... Okay.
Bear with me. Okay, so this large slab of marble, white marble, was extracted before he was born, and the commission was given to a guy named Agostino, but he abandoned the project, and I guess why is lost in history now, but he kind of just roughed out the legs, and then he was like, see ya! So another sculptor took over the project in 1476, which is about 12 years later.
So Michelangelo was 1 year old at this point.
Yes, and this man was named Antonio Rosolino, but he quit pretty quickly because he said that the marble was of poor quality. And then the marble was abandoned for a quarter century.
Wow.
Yeah, you said he was one, so 25 years this marble just sat in the elements out back behind the cathedral with partial legs.
I didn't know that it was started on by the time Michelangelo got to it.
Me neither, until I started researching for the podcast. That's why I was so excited to tell you. So in 1501, Michelangelo was asked, and he took up the challenge, and he was given 2 years to complete it because they were tired of just having this not even half finished, just started piece of marble.
I mean, what can you do with something like that? It's a giant hunkin' piece of marble in your backyard.
And from what I understand, it was too expensive to just get rid of. So, Michelangelo did it. He, in 1504, which is a year later than he originally planned, so it took him 3 years, he finished the sculpture, but it was 17 feet tall, and roofs back then didn't handle that kind of monstrosity.
Weren't as structurally sound as they are now. You would have to have very special supports for...
Yeah, I mean...
How heavy was it?
How much do you think it weighed?
I think it weighs at least a ton.
It weighs 6 tons.
No way! Oh my gosh! So my joke earlier about 10 tons was not that far off?
Yeah, it weighs 12,478 pounds.
Holy moly!
So it was a little heavy to be putting on a roof of a cathedral.
Yeah, not to mention how you're gonna hoist that thing up there even.
Yeah, so a committee of artists, including
Botticelli
and Da Vinci,
Leonardo,
they came together and concluded that they couldn't just put this in a storage room somewhere, obviously because it probably wouldn't fit through the doorway. They put it in a plaza, and it was called the Palazzo Vecchio in Florence. And that is where it stood for about 300 years. His whole lifetime it stood in this palazzo.
Okay.
And if someone is listening and hasn't seen the Statue of David, I would definitely recommend looking it up. We're going to do a quick description of it, though.
A lot of people have seen David, they just don't know it.
Yeah, he's depicted
in pop culture.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Yeah, you have some socks with David on.
Yes, I just bought some socks with David, and they're my favorite article of clothing right now. Okay, so David is, like Allie said, a hulking 17 feet tall. If you're familiar with Michelangelo, you've probably noticed that David is a little bit slimmer than the bodybuilder-esque paintings and drawings and sculptures that Michelangelo has done, especially on the Sistine Chapel. Even his women were manly. I would not want them to discipline me.
It's actually rumored that he's so slim because the marble had already been worked and worn by the elements, and he was working with what he had.
He has very pronounced, almost exaggerated facial features, alabaster white. He has a rock in his right hand and a slingshot in his left hand over his shoulder. And he has beautiful curly hair and chiseled abs.
He's gorgeous, really.
And his right hand is out of proportion.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to touch on that and the very defined facial features. Michelangelo was anticipating this to be seen
from above.
Yes. His right hand is lower, and it's believed that it was because that is something that he wanted you to focus on.
That's actually not uncommon in statues from around this era, because they almost gave the statues a forced perspective, so that when you looked at them, it didn't distort it from the angle you were looking at them.
Yeah, so another cool fact about David is he's from the biblical tale David and Goliath, but most depictions, like the one you showed me earlier, Donatello,
yes,
his depiction of David is after the battle.
Yes.
So he's got his sword, and he's got his foot on Goliath's head, and it's very triumphant. And this David is pre-battle. You can almost see a look of anxiety on David's face, a look of apprehensiveness. He's ready to go into battle, but there's always that chance he might not come out. I thought that was a very cool perspective for Michelangelo to look at this from.
Yeah, I think that he looks stoic. Stoic is statuesque, right? So.
Well, you're not wrong. So, there have been some happenings. David has been moved into a museum. He was moved in 1873 to the Galleria dell'Accademia in Florence, and that is where he stands today. There have been some events that have occurred to the original statue of David. In 1991, he's still at the Galleria. This Italian artist named Piero Cannata snuck a hammer into the museum. I can see that you know where this is going. And he smashed the second toe on David's left foot.
Why?
They asked him why, and he claimed that a model for the Renaissance artist Paolo Veronese had asked him to do it, and he was a contemporary of Michelangelo.
I am upset. There is a great video on YouTube of the restoration of David.
Really?
And she, I believe, fixes Michelangelo's toe.
Or David's toe, you mean?
Yes.
Luckily, he wasn't able to do any more damage because the people around were like, "What are you doing?" And they literally prevented him from doing any more damage until the police arrived.
Thank you.
Talk about a group hopping into action.
Good Samaritans. Now, if we could just do that when people get hurt.
Right? Obviously, there have been many renditions of David done over time. Michelangelo's David has specifically been recreated over and over again. Like you said, you have socks, there's t-shirts. One of my friends has a tattoo.
This type of biblical figures in statue and art is very common in the time period. For example, Da Vinci's Last Supper is the most famous Last Supper, but the Last Supper scene was very popular in dining halls and churches. David and Goliath was a popular figure in art because of the heroicism that the small underdog David was, even though Michelangelo really portrays him as a Greek god.
Yeah, it's said he's actually based off of Roman sculpture, which is basically based off of Greek sculpture, if we're being honest. Do you want to hear a funny story about one of David's replicas?
Of course!
Alright, 1857, the Grand Duke of Tuscany. He surprised England's Queen Victoria with a replica of Michelangelo's David. It is rumored that she was embarrassed by the nudity that they made a plaster fig leaf that was detachable.
Like they did in the time. There was lots of censoring
and
like that.
It was created to preserve the modesty of David around the women that might visit him. And I just thought that was so prim royal.
I just love how you can observe in art history when people were like, oh, nudity's bad. Oh, wait, nudity's alright. You know, like the Greeks were like, yes. And then the Romans were like, well, we're Christian,
and then
you're not
they
supposed to.
The Renaissance, and everyone was like, nudity art is good sometimes. We should do an episode about that.
Yes, I'd love to.
Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about is that there's been some studies shown that people are slowly deteriorating David.
Well, I hate to be the person that keeps saying that that's normal, but it's kind of normal for things like that to happen, especially to marble, because that's why you can't touch any of the statues, because we have oils all over our hands.
Yeah.
And if you've ever looked at a handrail, you can see where we've worn the paint, and sometimes even the wood's moved.
But the reason I said that is because apparently all of the foot traffic, because David is pretty well known.
If I find myself in Italy, that's the first thing I'm going to do. What do you mean?
Well, yeah, the Galleria dell'Accademia has more than just David, but studies have shown that the vibrations from foot traffic are near constant earthquakes. So it's tearing the marble apart, and it's tearing through new restoration.
I gotta go see David.
Let's plan a trip.
Maybe after college.
That's all I got.
I am very happy that I didn't do a ton of research on this because this was a ride. I love David. I'm kind of obsessed with him ever since I started taking drawing one.
And he's kind of had a resurgence in pop culture.
Absolutely.
As far as fashion and style go.
Classic Renaissance style art has really moved into the fashion world recently.
Yeah,
it's become more popular to really be into those kind of paintings and the angelic style that Da Vinci and Michelangelo portray.
I agree. So next week, are we doing a Valentine's Day episode?
Yes, we are. It's going to be coming out the day after Valentine's Day.
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about how Valentine's Day is a Hallmark holiday designed to sell you roses and chocolates to show that you love your significant other.
Because that's what love is.
I'm not saying that it's the only thing, but chocolate and flowers. I've never been mad when I was chocolates and flowers, right?
You do bring up a very good point. All right. If you would like to contact us, we have finally gotten around to creating an email, and you can send in suggestions or how to pronounce Michelangelo's name,
or call us out because we didn't get a fact correct.
So our email address is oopsiartedpod, that's OOPSIartedpod @gmail.com. So you guys have a good week, and we'll see you back next week.
See ya.